Hi everyone, this is Daphne. I hope you're doing well today. Today I will be doing problems on factoring polynomials. Factoring polynomials. Now, if we have a quadratic equation is an equation of the form ax squared plus bx plus c. So if you are asked to factor an equation of this form, there is a trick that you use. You look for two numbers. I'm going to call those numbers K1 and K2. Look for two numbers K1 and K2 that when you multiply K1, look for K1 and K2 such that K1 times K2 will be equal to C and K1 plus K2 will be equal to B. This is the key. This is the key. For example, let's try to factor the polynomial. Now, I'm going to work first with the situation where a is 1. For example, I have x squared plus 13x plus 40. I need to factor this equation. I need to look for two numbers that when I multiply them, it gives me 40. When I add them, it gives me 13. And I will put the factors of that polynomial will become, x plus k1 and x plus k2. So for example, if I take two numbers that if I multiply them, I'll have 40. Two numbers will be 8 and 5. I pick 8 and 5. 8 and 5. When I add 8 and 5, it will give me 13. So what will be the factors of this polynomial? The factors will be x plus 8 and x plus 5. Now, when you factorize a polynomial, it means if you multiply the answer that you had, it should take you back to the previous equation. So now let me solve it backward to show you that 8 and 5 are the right answers. So if I multiply this, I will have x times x is x squared. X times 5 plus 5x. 8 times x plus 8x. 8 times 5 plus 40. And this gives me x squared plus 13x plus 40. So that is the situation where this a is 1. But now if a were some number, we have to do something else. If a was some number, we will have to do it in a different way. So let me do another example. The second example could be x squared, like factor x squared minus 7x minus 18. Now I have to look for two numbers that when I multiply them, it will give me 18. When I add them together, it will give me, let's say, it will give me minus 18. When I add them together, it will give me minus 7. For example, if I take negative 9 and, let's say, negative 9 and 2. If I multiply it, I'll have negative 18. If I say negative 9 plus 2, I'll have negative 7. What if I took 9 and negative 2? It will not work, because if I multiply negative 9 times 2, I will have 18. But if I say 9 minus 2, I will have 7, which is not negative 7. So you see that you have to be sure. So this will become, we have found K1 and K2. K1, negative 9 and 2. K1 could be, it could be any of them. You can choose any of them to be K1. So remember, this is what we are using. So that will be factorized as x minus 9 times x plus 2. And if I multiply this out, I will go back to this equation. That is how you factorize those. Now, let me show you how, if the number in front of this here, this a here, was a different number. For example, if there was a different number here apart from 1, let's try to show you an example, such an example. Now, let me do factorize 6x squared plus 7x minus 24. So I still have to do the same thing. I have to look for a number that when I multiply, two numbers that when I multiply them, I have 24. When I add them, I will have 7. But what will the two numbers be? Okay, so here in this case, I think I said something else. In this case, I want you to listen well. I have to look for two numbers that I will multiply it to have 24. And I have to look for two numbers that I will multiply it and have 6. Now, for example, two numbers that when I multiply I will have 6 could be, let me get a different paper, could be 3 and 2 or 6 and 1. Let me write it like that. Numbers that I could multiply and have 24 could be 1 and 24, 3 and 8. I'm going to put negative. Say negative 3 and 8, negative 1 and 24, or maybe 6 and 4. But out of these numbers, these are the numbers that when I multiply, I will have this. These are the numbers that when I multiply, I will have 6. But I want to write these numbers. Let's take, for instance, I could choose 2 and 3. 3 and 2. I will write it like this, 2 and 3. If I multiply 2 and 3, I will have 6. Then if I multiply, I'm going to pick this one because I know that it's going to be the right one. So if I multiply negative 3 and 8, I will have 24. But I need to write these numbers in a way because I want to look for numbers that when I will do some math, it will give me 7. So I have 3 and 8, but I'm going to choose to write it this way, 8 and 3 and negative 3. Now I have to do a cross multiplication here. So I have to multiply. If I multiply this times this, I have minus 9. This times this is plus 16. Minus 9 plus 16 will give me 7. Those are the kind of number. That's the number I'm looking for. So this is going to be my answer. But let's take, for instance, that I choose 3 and 2. So even if you choose in the set of numbers, you still have to decide on how to write it. So I choose 3 and 2. And okay, I'm sorry, someone just stepped, they were calling on me. So yeah, I was saying that let's take, for instance, I picked 3 and 2 and I wrote it as 2 and 3, and then I wrote 8 and negative 3. If I do the math, cross multiplying and adding, so if I do 3 times 8, I will have 24. 2 times negative 3, I'll have minus 6. And it will not give me 7. That's why I didn't choose to write it like that. So I have to be able to think to see how I'll write it. And well, let's take, for instance, that I choose instead of 3, 2, and 3, and negative 3, 8. I'm going to write, you can write the negative anyway on any of the numbers. So let's say I took 3, 2, and negative 6, 4. If I do 3 times 2, 3 times 4, it will give me 12 minus 2 times negative 6 will give me 12. So it will not give me 7. See, that's why I picked this. I picked to write it like this, and I picked this. Or if I pick 3, 2, and negative 1, 24. If I did the math, it will not give me 7. It will not give me this 7. So what I'm saying is I pick 3, 2, because 3 times 2 will give me this 6. And then I'll pick negative 3, 8. But I have to be smart on how I write it. Write it as 8 and negative 3. And I cross multiply. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. 2 times 8 is 12 plus 12. This will give me 7. So I have found some numbers that can solve that problem. And now the answer to this factorize this equation is going to be, now remember we were using x plus k1 and x plus k2. Our k1 in this, k1 and k2 are going to be this. This is k1, this is k2. But I'm going to have this now in front of x. So my thing is going to become 3x plus 8. 3x plus 8 times 2x minus 3. And if I multiply this, I should get back to this to tell me that my answer is right. So let's do the math. 3x times 2x is 6x squared. 3x times negative 3 is negative 9x. 8 times 2x is plus 16x. 8 times negative 3 is negative 24. And if I bring the like terms together, I'll have 6x squared plus 7x minus 24. So that means these are the factors of this. So I am not sure if that is enough for you to understand. I'm going to give you another, I'm going to do another example. Let's take, for instance, 4x squared plus 4x plus 15. No, minus 15. Minus 15. So in the same way, I will look for factors of 4 and factors of 15. If I do the same similar thing we just did with the first problem, I will find, I can see 4 and 1, 2 and 2. Those will be factors of 4. Or I could just write 1 and 4. 1 and 4 is another one. And then for 15, I have 1, 15, 15, 1, 3, 5, or 5, 3. So it depends on which one I will pick, because I'm looking for something that at the end it will give me plus 4. When I do the math, it will give me plus 4. So I am going to take 2 and 2 for this 4 here. And then I'm going to take, for the numbers for 15, I have to take a number that when I cross multiply and do the addition, it's going to give me 4. For example, 15, I have 3 and 5. I don't want to take 1 and 15 because if I take 1 and 15, when I multiply, I have 30. I don't want to deal with big numbers. So that already shows me that that is not going to work. Or if I take 15 and 1 and I put it here, 15 and 1, when I multiply, I will still have 30 somewhere, or which will still be big. It doesn't take me close to this. So I will take 3 and 5. It matters how I write, whether I choose to write it as 3, 5, or 5, 3. But let's look. If I write it as, it has to be negative. One of them has to be negative. If I write it as negative 3 and 5, let's say I write it as, I have 2 and 2. Let's say I write it as negative 3 and 5, because negative 3 times 5 is 15. If I cross multiply, I will have, this will be 10 plus or minus, because there's a minus here, 10 minus 6, and it will give me 4. You see, I got the answer. But if I choose and I wrote it as 3 and negative 5, I would have had negative 10 plus 6, which will give me negative 4. That's not what I'm looking for. So the right thing is negative 3 and 5. Those are the factors. Once I have these factors, it is easy. The answer, the factor to this polynomial, factors will just be 2x minus 3 times 2x again plus 5. And if I multiply this out, I should come back to this. I hope this helps. Thank you for watching and have a good day.